Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Let's take a look back a few years. At that time, I was serving as a combat engineer platoon sergeant. We had recently been assigned a new company commander who was quite arrogant. My first interaction with him occurred after I returned from running an M240B range. I was informed that he wanted to speak with all leadership immediately in the conference room. It took him 3 hours to arrive, and despite repeated calls from the first sergeant, he insisted that we remain there. The entire meeting was spent with him bragging about himself and expressing his eagerness to deploy to the Middle East. I spoke up, essentially calling him out on his behavior, which ended the meeting and earned me a stern talking to and thinly veiled threats. This captain had been in service for 15 years without a single deployment, which requires considerable effort and a lot of figurative sucking up. His newfound eagerness to deploy seemed motivated by his impending promotion to major. Eventually, the brigade had a mission and asked for volunteers. The captain volunteered me, even though I had just gotten married a week earlier. I made it very clear to the higher-ups that I did not want to go. I was informed that the decision was between myself and the captain. About a month later, my sister-in-law passed away. Despite this, Captain Arrogant refused to grant me leave and insisted that I leave approximately a week after the funeral. Frustrated, I went to speak with the command sergeant major and was promptly removed from the deployment list. However, the captain, who was always currying favor with the battalion commander, faced no repercussions. Approximately 8 months later, Captain Arrogant got his wish. The headquarters platoon along with another platoon was scheduled for deployment. Naturally, because I had the most combat experience and deployments within the platoon, he decided that my platoon should be the one to go. To prepare for deployment, we first had to undergo a month-long field exercise, where our performance was evaluated. By this point, I was extremely frustrated. I gathered my squad leaders and devised a few unconventional missions. First, everyone was instructed to follow the captain's orders as literally as possible, no matter how impractical, and to offer no advice. This approach led to us being thoroughly defeated in training, which was quite satisfying. Secondly, and most importantly, was the psychological aspect. The captain had a strict bedtime of 9 p.m. each night. In the deserts of California, there are various insects that could be introduced into a sleeping bag, and his uniform was occasionally treated with juice. We also periodically hid some of his gear or made his rifle inoperable. For days this continued, and the poor guy slept very little as I made sure his tent was set up over a beehive. These bees were highly sensitive to vibrations and attracted to the juice, causing him to be constantly stung, although he never realized why. As we were about to fall under a new brigade, I had to meet with the higher-ups. To my surprise, the colonel we were assigned to had been my first company commander, with whom I had a great relationship. I pulled him aside and contacted my squad leaders. We informed him that Captain Arrogant was likely to get someone killed, pointing out his erratic behavior and the overall poor performance. As a result, the captain was quickly relieved of command, a significant blow to his career, and reassigned to an office position where he belonged. As for myself and my platoon, I still didn't want to go, but the new company commander was my former platoon leader from my second deployment. Additionally, I couldn't let my team go without me. It turned out to be my final deployment, as some injuries forced me out of the military, but everyone returned safely. I later sent a text to one of my former squad leaders because I couldn't recall the exact details about the captain. He had been a specialist before becoming an officer, and clearly I hadn't cared enough to remember that information. First off, I apologize for any potential grammar, spelling, or formatting issues. I'm dyslexic and typing this on my phone. Okay, so this story happened a few years ago at an old job of mine. that sold vinyl records, CDs, DVDs, and merchandise for all said items. For future reference, it was around the end of February when this happened. I was working alone to close that night. We had a very small staff, so often one of us was closing alone, and we were about 30 minutes to close when entitled lady came up to the checkout counter. She said she needed to do a return for a shirt she bought for her son that he didn't end up liking. What follows is the conversation I had with her, to the best of my memory. Entitled lady: "Hi, I'd like to return a shirt I bought. My son didn't end up liking it." Cashier: "Of course I can help you out with that. Do you have the receipt?" Entitled lady: "No, I don't." Cashier: "Unfortunately, I really need the receipt. My system won't let me process a return without it." Entitled lady sighs loudly and rolls her eyes. I think it might be at home. Would a picture of it be okay?" Cashier: "Yeah, I can work with a picture of the receipt." Entitled lady: "Okay, let me just ask my son to send a photo." She then proceeds to just stand directly in front of the only till I have while texting her son. Cashier: "Excuse me, ma'am. Could you just shift over a little so I can help these people out while you wait for your son to send that photo?" Entitled lady sighs loudly and rolls her eyes again while taking the smallest half step over. Cashier helps out the next customer even though this lady barely moved and the people had to reach in front of her so they could put their items down. After I finished helping out my line, and it is now about 15 minutes to close. Entitled lady: "Here is the photo of the receipt." Cashier: "Okay, great, thank you. And do you have the shirt with you?" I look at the photo for a second just to verify it's the correct store. Entitled lady pulls out the shirt and slams it on the counter here. Cashier picks up the shirt and notices that the tag is missing. "Oh, so sorry, ma'am. We only allow returns for items with the tag still on." At this point, I also notice the shirt is super wrinkled and has a mix of laundry detergent and cigarette smell on it. Entitled lady, before I can mention the fact the shirt has clearly been washed, looks in purse and pulls out tag and throws it on counter. Cashier: "I am so sorry, ma'am, but it appears this shirt has been washed already, and again, I can only accept items that have the tag still attached and are in unused condition." Entitled lady: "You're joking me, right? My son didn't wear it. He never used it and the tag is right there. Just give me my money back." Cashier: "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's against my store policy to accept this as a return." Entitled lady, talking very loudly and slowly as if to insinuate I'm stupid: "Just process my return. God, what is it with you people? Don't you know how to do your job?" Also shoves phone in my face with a photo of the receipt. I assume by you people she just meant retail workers because she and I are both white. Cashier: "I'm sorry, ma'am, but as I mentioned, I am unable to accept this return." I catch a glance at her receipt and see she bought the shirt at the start of October. As previously mentioned, it was currently late February. Additionally, our return policy is only valid for 30 days, and your receipt says you bought this shirt in early October. Entitled lady starts yelling about how I'm dumb and don't know how to do my job and demands to speak to my manager. "I told you my son never used the shirt. When I bought it doesn't matter, you idiot. Don't you know the customer is always right?" Cashier: "As I said, our return policy is only valid for 30 days. So even if the shirt had the tags attached and was never washed, it has still been 4 months since you purchased the shirt. Additionally, my manager isn't here, as it is just me today, but you can try and come back during the day as a manager should be in then." Entitled lady yells, "UGGHH" very high-pitched, and then marches about 20 steps away and is standing towards the other end of my counter. During the time she is stepped away, I quickly text my manager and explain the situation. He says just to let her do an exchange and we will deal with the shirt. So I then walk over to her, and it is about 5 minutes to close. Cashier: "Hi, ma'am. So I just spoke to my manager and they said that I can process an exchange for you to get a different shirt." Entitled lady: "GODDD, are all of you stupid? I don't want to exchange for another shabby shirt. Just give me my money back." Cashier, still calm as a cucumber with a smile on my face: "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but unfortunately I can only offer you an exchange for a different shirt." Entitled lady: What's your head office's phone number? I am going to call to get you fired. Cashier. Our head office doesn't have a public phone number. Entitled lady. Then give me their personal number. You are so fired. Cashier. Unfortunately, ma'am, even if I were legally allowed to give out their numbers, I personally don't have them. Entitled lady is screaming and yelling, and someone who was just looking around just stares at this lady in horror, and leaves. Cashier. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we are now closed, so I am going to have to ask you to leave. Entitled lady. I'm not leaving until you are fired. Cashier. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now as we are closed, but you can come back tomorrow. We are open from this time to this time. Entitled lady continues yelling and screaming while I slowly herd her to the door like I'm a dog herding sheep. Entitled lady. I demand to speak to your manager. Give me your phone. I will call them myself. Cashier. I am just thinking that we are so close to the door I can almost lock her out. Ma'am, as I have mentioned, we have now been closed for 10 minutes. This lady literally just yelled and screamed about this shirt for so long, and it took us like 7 minutes to walk to the door, even though it was close enough I could hit it with a rock. I will not be giving you my personal cell phone, but again, if you would like, you can come by tomorrow. We are open from this time to this time. Entitled lady, in a high-pitched yell. UGHH stomps her last 5 stomps out the door, then turns and glares at me. Cashier. Locks gate. The store was in a mall, so the lady just stood in the hallway. Entitled lady. Bangs on gate as soon as I lock it and yells that she will get me fired and just wait till she talks to her lawyers about this. Cashier. Walks away back to checkout counter so I can start counting my till and closing. Entitled lady. Suddenly charges back towards me, yelling, I'm not done with you. Cashier. Ma'am, please leave or I will have to call security. Entitled lady. Swings her purse at me, narrowly missing my head. Give me my money back now. Cashier. Dodges and backs away quickly. Ma'am, violence is not acceptable. I'm calling security. Security. Arrives quickly as they were nearby, restrains entitled lady. Entitled lady. Still shouting, this isn't over, I will have you fired. Cashier. Calmly to security, thank you, please escort her out. Security. Takes entitled lady away, still yelling. Cashier. Finally able to close up the store, shaken but relieved, locks the gate and returns to the checkout counter. Cashier. Takes a deep breath and starts counting the till, trying to steady nerves after the chaotic encounter. After a few minutes, the store manager arrives for the next shift. Manager. Notices the tension. Hey, are you all right? I got your text. What happened? Cashier. Explains the situation, recounting the entire incident with entitled lady, including the violent outburst. She was demanding a refund for a shirt she clearly wore, and when I followed store policy, she became aggressive and tried to hit me. Security had to escort her out. Manager. Listens intently. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. You did the right thing by calling security. I'll make sure to file a report and review our procedures to ensure this doesn't happen again. Cashier. Thanks, I'm just glad it's over. I was really worried when she started swinging her purse. Manager. Offers support. Do you need anything before you head out? We can arrange for you to take a day off if you need it. Cashier. Shakes head. I'll be okay. I just need to finish up here and then I'll head home. Thanks for understanding. Manager. Nods. All right, finish up and get some rest. We'll follow up on this tomorrow. The cashier finishes closing the store, feeling a mix of relief and residual anxiety. As they head home, they hope for a quieter shift the next day, and a resolution to the disturbance caused by entitled lady. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Years ago, my family enjoyed staying at a guest house in a town known for its tourist attractions. It was a family-friendly place, conveniently located near my favorite ice cream shop and a family-oriented restaurant we often visited. The owners were initially friendly, but a troubling pattern emerged. Every time a guest left, there were suddenly fees for damages, despite no visible damage. Some guests began to find alternative accommodations, as they knew they hadn't caused any harm. We stayed there 3 or 4 times, but the situation worsened when the gooseberry incident occurred, which proved to be the last straw. My family later joked that we were naive for paying for imaginary damages demanded by entitled owners. And unfortunately, we were. The turning point happened when I was around 12 or 13 years old. Another family was staying there, including a 15-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy. I greeted the girl, but she reacted with hostility, almost as if I had insulted her. She refused to interact with me, and her mother laughed heartily at the situation, mocking my attempt at a friendly gesture. My family was instructed not to approach them, not even to offer a greeting. This behavior also infuriated the other guests, as they believed that every guest should greet them humbly. Meanwhile, the children in that family were rude, and when damage occurred, including a broken window that both owners witnessed, they did not ask for compensation from the other family. 2 days before the major confrontation, both owners asked me to pick gooseberries from a bush. I thanked them and explained that I was highly allergic and could not touch even a leaf without severe consequences. Eating just one berry required calling paramedics, though with medical assistance, I could now touch a gooseberry bush without eating the fruit. It was a significant improvement. On the day of the confrontation, we returned from dinner to find both owners waiting for us. They began yelling, causing other guests to come out of their rooms to see what was happening. Every single gooseberry bush had been damaged. Broken branches, flattened berries, and a sorry sight indeed. The owners accused my family of causing the damage, claiming they had seen me minutes earlier destroying the bushes. My mom and aunt protested, pointing out that I was with them in the restaurant at that time, and the restaurant owners could confirm this. Despite this, the guest house owners insisted it was me. The boy and girl from the other family were present too, laughing and telling everyone that my family would have to pay a hefty sum. After some back and forth, I did something a child probably shouldn't do. I confronted the owners, specifically asking Mr. Owner if he remembered me explaining my allergy. Before he could answer, Mrs. Owner yelled at me, questioning why my statements should matter. Ignoring her, I asked Mr. Owner if he had to call paramedics when I supposedly flattened all the bushes. He looked at me oddly and asked why he would need to do that. I explained that it was to prevent arrest for causing my own harm by denying me medical help. The onlookers grew quiet, surprised by a child mentioning such serious matters. I then picked a leaf from a gooseberry bush and held it up. An immediate rash appeared. I asked the owners if they wanted me to remove my clothes so they could see the rash covering my body, and explain how I could have damaged the bushes without suffering from the rash. The owners mumbled that they had no idea it was so serious. Some guests mentioned that they had seen rude children damaging the bushes and questioned why I was being blamed. We returned to our room, and my father went to the restaurant to settle our account. He asked the restaurant owners to tally our expenses and let him know what we owed. They told us to pay for the next day, as they had already ordered groceries for our meals, which was fair but not for the remainder of our stay. This was quite generous of them. Dad came back to the guest house where we were packing, and we asked the owners for our bill for the entire 2 weeks. We also asked other guests to be witnesses just in case. Mr. Owner said it was unnecessary, while Mrs. Owner was upset. We even asked them and the witnesses to inspect our room for any damages. We left 30 minutes later, and on our way home consulted a doctor. He examined my arm, scolded me sternly, advised me to avoid allergens, and continue my regular medication. We then drove home. Every year, we used to call the guest house around March to check for room availability in July. However, the following year, we did not contact them. In May, they called us, offering our regular room with a 5% discount. We happily explained that after the previous year's unpleasant experience with attempted extortion, we had found another guest house in town_X. There was some clucking on the other end, and my mom ended the call. We never returned to that guest house. Although I visited the same town several times due to its charm and amusing tourist attractions, I always avoided that particular guest house. Interestingly, despite the witnesses we had, the owners did not include fake damage fees in our final bill. However, they never apologized for the shouting and accusations. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.